The industrial real estate sector was one of the strongest in commercial real estate last year, and this was even with supply chain issues, rising interest rates, and a recession that seemed to be on the horizon for most of the year. As a real estate investor myself, industrial real estate has always fascinated me as one of those pockets of the real estate scene that kind of goes under the radar and unnoticed, which isn't all that surprising considering most of the industrial space in major cities sits on the outskirts of town, out of sight, out of mind. As my curiosity for industrial real estate has peaked as of lately, I've become more and more mindful of headlines about warehouse development, areas where this real estate sector is booming, and also what the biggest industrial player, Amazon, is doing during these times of explosive growth in industrial real estate. Well, good news for you guys and for me. I happen to have a good friend who is a wizard when it comes to this stuff. He has been an industrial real estate broker since 2005 and an investor since 2014.
Most people would never think that one building in New York is bringing in $20 million worth of rent.
Today, let's spend some time with Chad Griffiths and learn some more about industrial real estate. So I think the best thing we can do to kick this off is if you could just introduce yourself to everybody, who you are, what your company is all about, and why I chose you as the industrial expert for today's video.
So my background, I got into industrial real estate in 2005, and I just so happened to join an office that was focused on industrial real estate. I've actually been at the same company ever since. So coming on 18 years that I've been doing it. And then I started investing in my own properties in 2014. And with partners and a whole lot of debt, we've pretty much added a property every year since. The last one that we closed on was a $6.5 million property in December. We've got 3 large industrial companies as tenants in there. So it's come from the first property I bought in 2014 was a small warehouse condominium. And now we've scaled that to be larger properties in general. And I just love talking about industrial real estate. It really is something that I live, breathe, and sleep. And I'm just so passionate about it. And it's funny how I accidentally stumbled into it, and now it's become not just a career, not just an investment vehicle where I have the majority of my net worth, but something I just love talking about.
Cool to hear his trajectory and track record, guys. I mean, this is actually a really common strategy amongst all real estate investors to try to acquire a new property every year, and it should come as no surprise that I can definitely relate to loving talking about real estate. I mean, that's kind of why I started this YouTube channel to begin with, just to talk real estate with all of you guys.
The industrial market in the US is about 21.5 billion square feet. And the aggregate value of that, it ranges depending on market conditions, but it's about $2 trillion. So it's this massive, massive industry that is by design is out of the public purview.
That is a ton of value, guys. And it's kind of funny that all of that value is sitting in an asset class that's kind of in the shadows and on the outskirts of town. For some context here as it relates to the total market, the estimated total value of commercial real estate as a whole in the US, which would include apartments, storage, retail, office, medical, all of that amounts to about 20 trillion. So if the industrial market is about $2 trillion in total value, that represents about 10% of all of commercial real estate.
So I usually break industrial into 3 subcategories. First one would be warehousing, and that's probably what more people are familiar with now. Big Amazon distribution centers. You can think of FedEx. You can think of all the companies that have distribution centers, from home improvement to shoe stores. There's a lot of people that have driven by some of those buildings like Skechers, where they have a massive building for where they hold all their shoes. And that's what really a warehouse is just a building where things are stored, sorted, shipped out to go to the end user. The other one, which is equally as large, but just not as prevalent, is manufacturing. And the one that I love using for this example, because most people can envision this, is the Boeing Center just outside of Seattle. This is a 4 million square foot building, 4 million square feet, 90-foot ceilings, the biggest building in the world by volume. And all that they do in there is all the raw materials come in, if they get packaged, assembled, manufactured, put together. Ultimately, an airplane comes out. They just rolled the last 747 out of there a few months ago, actually now. But that's all that is, just a manufacturing building.
That Boeing building is fascinating. I actually did a video on that one a while back, and Chad later shared that he had the opportunity to go out there and tour the building before. It's hard to even fathom a 4 million square foot single-story building. That's literally enough building to cover all of Disneyland and then some. Next, we shift the conversation to Amazon and talk about about why exactly Amazon is choosing to lease so much space instead of buy. Because if you look at the stats, Amazon has generally leased their space since they got started. As of the last report, they leased around 370 million square feet of industrial space.
Why would Amazon lease that much space in the first place? One of the most valued companies in the whole world. Why would they be leasing space when they clearly have the money to purchase their own space? And it often comes down to pure economics and business sense, where the company should be able to make a bigger return investing the money that they otherwise would put into real estate. They should be able to grow their business more by investing that either in new product lines or opening up into new markets. And we saw this for the most part. Amazon has grown from a small online bookstore. 1995, I believe, is when they started as a online bookstore out of Jeff's garage, and now it's gone on to be multinational. They're in many different product lines. They're in grocery, they're in convenience stores. Their web services business is actually one of their most profitable lines. And they did that because instead of investing in the real estate, they took that money to invest in growth.
Next, I asked Chad if most business owners who need industrial space like Amazon are also choosing to lease that space, or if a lot of the other companies out there who are maybe a lot smaller are choosing to buy instead.
I'm still seeing more of the large companies preferring to lease versus own, just for the fact that you're tying up a lot of capital. And if you can't make a better return within your business than you can in real estate, then you should probably just get into real estate investing and close the business down.
My next question is around who actually owns these buildings, because I've always wondered, is it those big REITs or hedge funds that are buying these industrial spaces, or is it more mom and pop real estate investors like you and me?
It would be predominantly institutional money, and a real estate investment trust, like you mentioned, would be a very common one. So Prologis, incidentally, Prologis is the largest industrial real estate owner in the world. Amazon's a large tenant of theirs. So it is a lot of those big institutional players, whether it's a REIT or a pension fund or a large group, and it really just comes down to capital. So I'm a small investor myself. I can't play in that space because an Amazon building could be $50 million to invest in. And that's a lot of risk for one person to take in. A very wealthy family absolutely could do it, but it's not often going to be the smaller investors like myself.
Some of you guys know that I've done some commercial investing myself. I bought and sold a medical building a couple years back and bought and sold an office building last year. Those were much smaller deals though. A $50 million building rented out to Amazon, that's not something regular everyday people are going to be able to buy. The down payment alone on a deal like that is going to be like 15 million bucks.
There's a building actually that Amazon just did in our market, 3 million square feet, but it's over 5 floors. So it's actually 600,000 square footprint building, 5 floors, almost entirely robotic and automation. There's very few people that work in it. It's a picking system where the robot or the automation will go in and pick it off the shelf, deliver it down a shaft or an elevator tube or conveyor system, and then it gets shipped out the same way. And I've heard that they're doing more of these, and they're trying to perfect this model from a density standpoint. You can appreciate 3 million square feet takes up a lot of land, and in very dense markets, LA, New York, Vancouver, where the land is just really constrained, all of a sudden, if you can take a 3 million square foot building and condense it to 600,000 square foot footprint, you now have that much more vertical space without having to take up the land.
A 3 million square foot Amazon distribution center? What? Next, we get into how much these tenants are paying to rent out these massive warehouse spaces.
Surprisingly, I was actually very surprised to see this. Memphis, out of all large areas in North America, Memphis has the cheapest rate. I believe it's $3.73 per square foot on average to lease industrial space. And that could still range, right? You could have a really old rundown building, which is going to be on the lower end. You might have a brand new modern building, which is a little bit above. Conversely, if you go and compare that to New York or New Jersey, their markets are approaching $20 a square foot. But to put that in the context, so that's quoted per square foot per annum per year. So if Amazon's renting a 1 million square foot building and they're in New York, just using an average here, and it's $20 a square foot. It's $20 million a year in rent that they're paying.
Okay, it's official. New life goal. At some point in life, I need to own a 1 million square foot industrial building. I mean, bringing in $20 million per year, even after you pay your mortgage and all your other expenses, that's still going to be like $500,000 per month in passive income. Not a bad way to retire. Last, I asked Chad for some actionable steps for anybody out there who's thinking about getting into industrial real estate investing.
Become a local market expert by driving into the neighborhoods and becoming very familiar with it, reading everything that you can about in the industrial real estate market, and also just industrial real estate in general. How can you learn more about the asset class, and then surround yourself with a really good team? I think that's a good format to have success in this industry.
I saw a CBRE report that said that the US is going to need another 1.5 billion square feet of industrial real estate over the course of the next 5 years. So there's absolutely going to be opportunity out there for industrial real estate investors to capitalize on this growth. Huge shout out to Chad for hopping on today's episode. I know I learned a ton, and I hope that you guys did too. I'll link to all of Chad's information down below. He's got his own YouTube channel where he gets way into the weeds on this industrial real estate topic. So if you want to learn more, make sure you check that out. I'll see you guys next time.